How's it going, everyone? During my time teaching on this platform, there's one question that pops up more than any other, and that is, where do I find good vocals? There are so many excellent sources for vocals, which can almost feel overwhelming. That's why I've put together this ultimate vocal guide to help you start your search and hopefully spark some inspiration in the process. In this tutorial, we'll be covering my 3 favourite vocal types with a focus on uncovering all the best places to find them. And for those who stick around, I'll be revealing an incredible source with 4,000 different vocal adlibs. Let's get into it. The first vocal we're going to be talking about is obviously acapellas, which are essentially those longer vocals. If I show my library, we've got vocals and then I've got this kind of acapella bundle. I seem to remember there being some collection online that kind of got me started, but over the years I've added to it and I've kind of categorized by different artists. So that's just a quick introduction to the acapellas. Now we'll kind of move into where you might source these. The very first place I would start my search is actually just Google. If I have a particular song in mind that I want the vocal for, I will literally type in the name of the track followed by acapella or DIY vocals, which stands for do it yourself, to basically see if there's been any acapellas of that song already uploaded. The quality of these tends to vary and you won't always find these tracks, but if you can find these tracks, it'll save you having to do it yourself. So often I'll kind of type that in and then I'll just see what comes up. We'll normally start with like YouTube, and it doesn't look like there's a version on YouTube, which is the easy option. You occasionally get these websites, Acapellas for You and Vocalar.it. These are essentially like membership sites where you can download a bunch of acapellas. If we just quickly hop back into the project, I could then type in that vocal, which I've already downloaded.
There's a big train en route. Hear the horn as it toots, arriving in your town tonight.
I think it should be no secret that one of the best ways to find vocals is literally just listening to a lot of music and digging for new records. I think YouTube playlists are 100% one of the best ways to find this stuff. So what you can do is you can search kind of generic terms like acapella and see what comes up. You'll get a lot of pretty popular vocals, which I'd kind of advise staying away from for a number of reasons. One, it's not really going to be that unique if you're using it in your tracks, and 2, to do with like copyright and clearance. So acapella and using those generic terms like DIY vocal can be a good starting point if you just want a vocal to play with. But if you maybe want to release those tracks, I'd start getting a bit more specific with my terms. You could search stuff like genre, and you basically get gold mines of vocals. So people have put together playlists that are literally just acapellas for 90s house, and this can just kickstart a whole rabbit hole of interesting finds. So what could I do? I could do this.
Ladies and gentlemen, is in the house.
This is quite a clean result. Sometimes you'll get files that are named Studio Acapella, and you'll know they're going to be good quality vocals, but if you're not hearing background noise, then it's probably going to be a lot easier to use these vocals, and we've struck absolute gold on this one. If I just go to some other ones.
I didn't know how much you meant to me. All the reasons
I could spend all day just going through these sick vocals. I think it's something that all the best producers do, is they really spend that time digging down these kind of playlists to find music that just sounds so fresh. So you can kind of use the YouTube playlists in 2 ways. You can start searching very specifically for different acapellas and looking through the playlists, or you can use it for just looking for music that you can then turn into a vocal later on. So I could take acapella out the search completely, and I could literally just browse for records that I think would be quite nice. Just go down that rabbit hole, listen to music, try and identify nice vocals, and there's a process that we'll get into shortly that you can use to isolate these vocals, so don't be worried about that. So you can go down that exercise of using YouTube playlists to discover new music and hopefully discover potential when it comes to your vocals. Another cool tool I've discovered recently, it's basically a sampling tool called Samplet.io, which is perfect for this kind of thing. What it essentially does is it scans the kind of YouTube database for different tracks. So what I could do is I could filter it by genre. I've been into my kind of hip house recently. So what I'll do is electronic, we'll go to style, and then we'll go hip house. We could then enter a tempo. So I could put something generic like 120 to 128. We could sort by popularity of the track. We could sort by the year. I'd encourage you to play around with these filters because the more specific you get, the more unique the vocal is probably going to be.
You must do this, you must do that. What is the experience when you get the feeling? The place is steaming, girls in the house, yeah.
YouTube playlists and Samplet.io are just great tools for discovering music in general. So I definitely recommend trying them. The next recommendation we have is Discogs. For anyone unfamiliar, Discogs is basically a big online record store. You can find all sorts of records. And what I've got is this example. So using that Samplet tool from before, I discovered this track. An interesting thing about this record is it actually came in a vocal version. Some records have a vocal cut, which can just be an insane way to pick up vocals. So the YouTube preview exists here, which I'll just quickly play.
Stepping into the house.
Essentially digging for these records on places like Discogs, or if you live near a record shop, then I'd encourage you to go. The only thing you need to consider about vinyl is you need to have a way to convert them from that physical format to that digital format, but other than that, it's another great way to find those vocals. Once you've found those cool samples, then you can start the process of isolating the vocal using tools like vocalremover.org. Just to give a quick run through of how the process works, we essentially need to search for a track that we can split across music and vocal. So I've got this track here that I randomly came across yesterday. Then we'll just let it do its thing.
A few moments later.
Once the process is finally completed, you essentially end up with literally just the music and the vocal. What I'll just quickly do is I'll just kind of play through the quality.
Spent too long trying to figure all this out with theory.
You're a scientist, Brad.
So listen to me.
So it's quite a trippy kind of Slav house record, and it's just a really nice vocal. Another nice feature about this tool is it will identify the key and the BPM. So what I'd encourage you to do is differentiate by adding DIY. Then what I'll do is I'll quickly put in the key and the BPM just to help with my search when I'm actually in a session. It just makes life so easy, just knowing that information straight away. The next recommendation I have for vocals is actually a little underrated hack that I don't think many people know about. It's on Beatport, but if you head over to this genre called DJ Tools, then if you scroll over to releases, what you can do is you can go to the subgenre and you can actually filter it by acapellas. So you've essentially got all these acapellas. If we just have a look here, studio gear, why not?
More gear, selling gear to make more gear, selling gear to get more gear.
Let's just quickly find another example. 90s classic acapella.
It up a little more, get the party going on the dance floor.
Everybody's free to feel good. Music is the vibe, so open up your eyes.
So another place I would recommend is those kind of DJ tools on Beatport. Some other alternatives which perhaps require you to get a bit more creative, but they're obviously going to tick that box in terms of originality, is firstly recording original ones. We are surrounded by inspiration every day. This could be someone outside in the garden. It could be literally someone around the house. It could literally be anything. So my advice here is to use a decent quality mic if you're in the house perhaps, or I'd advise maybe picking up a kind of portable mic like the Tascams, just to be able to capture audio that's decent quality on the move. I think it's worth mentioning because these are normally the vocals that make a massive difference just because they're fresh. So recording original ones would be one of my recommendations if you were able to. Another approach you could use is collabing online. The first idea that comes to mind for me is services like Fiverr. I could essentially type in something like record original vocals and just see if there's anyone that might have potential there, and just kind of reach out to people. I'm sure you'd be able to find something in amongst all of these that might have potential. So that's another option. The alternative is relying on your network on social media, maybe post an instrumental version and see who responds. So collabing with Vocalists would be another recommendation I'd make. The final source that I'll not recommend but I'll address because I'm aware that some people might go down that route is vocal sample packs and services. So I'm going to be honest, when it comes to vocal sample packs, I would say hard avoid. I typically find that most of these packs are filled with a lot of cheese.
Say cheese!
I just think it's a lot of garbage that isn't necessarily suitable for the kind of music that a lot of people watching this would make. With services like Splice, you might have that subscription already, but it wouldn't be something I'd sign up to specifically for vocals. So that is going to conclude this rather in-depth section on where to source acapellas. Next up, we'll be talking about the Adlibs. For those who don't really know what Adlibs are, they're essentially a short section of audio, like a phrase or a word.
People always talk about
Basically those shorter phrases which have advantages over acapellas in that they're normally easier to integrate into a project and they're normally a more original way of doing things as well. So that's kind of the Adlibs, and what we'll essentially do is we'll run through some of my favourite kind of sources and techniques to get these vocal types. So my first recommendation is actually just a really simple technique which involves chopping up those acapellas from before, but just utilising different sections of them. So if I use this example from above,
It's 6 in the morning, we still going strong. Must be the music got these gangsters gone. I'm trying to stay the smoke down on you.
what I've started doing is essentially just chopping out different phrases from that. There's other instances where you'll have vocals which are mostly sung, but then if you go to the start, the end, or kind of like the break sections, sometimes you'll find isolated bits of spoken word audio. And then the last one you've got is kind of like probably like the main vocal of this track.
You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge.
What it essentially is, you can basically go to acapellas and you can like take the kind of speaking from the start or end of the acapella, like this. A lot of these kind of acapellas might have it.
You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge.
So chopping up acapellas would tend to be where I start. The next source I'd recommend specifically for Adlibs is sample packs. So the three kind of go-tos that I normally go for. The first one I will show is the 0G data files, which probably one of the most popular sources out there.
Take it from the top.
Do not resist.
House rocker.
What do you think of that? Do not resist the beat.
So you've got 3 different packs with probably somewhere in the region of, 300 different Adlibs.
But the beat can
Bust it like this. Give it to them. Bust the beat.
execute.
So you've got 0G. The other one that comes to mind is called Boo Records. It's kind of like a sample pool, which you can literally find, I believe, from this link. So I'll just show it. You've got vocals here.
Unjust.
Move on up the stairs. It's alright. Dig, man. There go.
Let's get on.
I get my high from smoking soul.
This is also quite a popular source. The next one I'd recommend is a site called Breakbeat Paradise, which has loads of really cool samples, and it's got different categories. So you've got like male vocals, you've got female vocals, and I've gone ahead and downloaded all the packs. You can go to that website, and then what you can do is you can go to these categories and you can find a mixture of stuff.
Do you want a jam from me?
Cool.
Bass in your face.
Yeah.
So Breakbeat Paradise and those other sample packs would kind of be one of my staples. My next recommendation is once again returning to YouTube, but we're changing up our search terms this time. So you can type in something like spoken word poetry and basically listen out for vocals that might have potential.
In your dreams, you see the way the world should be, but we breathe in reality.
So different kind of spoken word type stuff. I could pick a category, I guess.
My people's my drugs, they counsel and console me in these vices. Got a vice grip like hold on me and it's squeezing out my natural dopamine.
So you're going to have to do some work to actually find stuff that's usable, and you're going to listen to a lot of stuff where there's kind of background noise, which might have potential, but do be cautious of the fact that not everything's going to work. If I just show a few examples, I did this exercise a few years ago, and I literally just sampled anything.
God is not willing that you should ever perish.
Like, just random stuff like that. There's a few kind of like drug documentaries. There's Frank Zappa.
She was a disc jockey groupie.
You've got like speeches. You've got like some movie scenes, interviews, just loads of random things. All sorts of unique sources where they're speaking and there's possibility to use them in some capacity in your track. So I'd definitely encourage you to go down that rabbit hole once more, but with spoken word related terms. The next one that I'll recommend quickly is, once again, recording those original vocals. So pick up a decent quality mic or make sure your phone has decent recording quality, and literally just while you're out and about, start recording. Just record people having a conversation without their permission type thing. So that would be a quick recommendation I'd have, is just to record original ones and just see what you can do with everyday inspiration. This kind of segues us quite nicely onto my next recommendation, which is movies and TV shows. Essentially start taking inspiration from just random visual content that you're watching. You can either do this by just sitting down watching as you normally would and keeping an ear out for that kind of stuff, or you can use these kind of AI tools which essentially scan the library of different movies, TV shows for any instance where a phrase or a word is used. So this site here that I normally use is called getyarn.io, and what I'll essentially do is I'll type a word or phrase. I'll type the word dance, and what you'll essentially get is loads of different kind of examples where they say the word dance. Just click on one.
Dance.
That's a relatively clean example. Sometimes you'll find there's a lot of background stuff, so you'll kind of need to use common sense in terms of whether it would require a lot of work or whether it would actually fit your track right from the off. So you can either type in one word or you can type in like phrases, and obviously the more kind of specific you get in your search terms, the better, I would say.
I've been very naughty.
There's just so much gold on this to troll through, and I would very much recommend looking for these kind of vocals from movies and TV shows just to get a bit more creative. So Get Yarn would be the first one, and then a very similar tool which works in a slightly different way is called playphrase.me, where you essentially put in a phrase similar to before, and it will basically play a sequence of videos where they use pretty much identical words.
That was insane. We almost just died.
That was insane.
Insane.
Man, that was insane.
It'll basically play up to 5 different phrases, and you'll see from that example there was a lot of kind of background stuff which you probably wouldn't be able to use, but there was one example within there where there's definitely potential. So using those kind of like AI sites to basically make your life easy and find specific phrases, this can be a great way to do that. On the subject of movie vocals, I've recently come across a pretty cool creator called Gowler Music, where they have a few kind of sample packs, some of which are free, which have movie dialogue in them.
He and a medium called Elaine Zacharias.
Already. Lunar
Phase 1 to Pegasus.
Our lives have been changed so much.
So loads of good stuff which I'd urge you to check out there, and in general I would say movie and TV shows is a great way to find really unique stuff. Next up on the list is a recommendation that I wouldn't give as a kind of go-to, but it's a nice kind of extra to have. So my recommendation is essentially plugins. Occasionally within some plugins you'll find different kind of vocal types, but there's a few that I'm aware of that have like Adlibs. So the first one that I've used a lot in the past is this one called the SRX, which is basically like 90s kind of inspired, and there's a few kind of vocal presets.
DJ, stop!
Yeah.
Go! Scream!
Good evening.
Get on up!
Yeah.
Get on up!
Basically, every key is a different vocal for this particular preset. Another one that I'd recommend is by Arturia called the Vocoder V. Essentially what it is a bunch of vocoded vocals. So you can use it in that way, but our focus here is on the Adlibs. So a useful hack that I quite like is basically go to these vocoder presets and then just pull down to 0% so it's fully dry.
Synthesize vocoder generator.
And you get so many cool Adlibs which you could then resample.
That's the way, that's the way.
So vocal categories within plugins would be my next recommendation. The final recommendation is honestly hands down gonna be an absolute game changer for you. I recently discovered a collection of around 4,000 different vocal Adlibs. They've also been named to the exact phrase or word that's been spoken.
Check it out.
Come on, let's do it now.
Give me something to dance. Go see that.
I told you I'd save the best to last. This is honestly gonna change the game for you when it comes to vocals, and I'm gonna give that to you completely free. It will be linked below. So that is gonna conclude our section on Adlibs. The final vocal type I'll talk about is gonna be textures. So you can essentially think of these as kind of like the background vocals that aren't exactly clear in what they're saying, but they help to add a bit of depth to your mix. The first place I like to look for these vocals is a site called freesound.org. It tends to have a lot of like user submissions which are very unique. You can get all sorts of vocals really, but we'll see if we can find something. Vocal texture. This one might do the trick, like a drone. So they're kind of more SFX instrumental stuff, which can also work, but we want those kind of textures. So what I might do instead is I might do something like crowd noise. Because these vocals tend to sit in the background, I tend to find that you can go for most sound sources as long as you've kind of processed them in the right way. If you're looking for SFX and textures in general, the BBC sound library is probably one of the best places you can go. You can basically get a bunch of like different types of SFX. I'll not skim through everything, and I'll very much let you go and do your own kind of exploration, but BBC Sound Library and Freesound are great for these kind of textures. So that is basically going to conclude our section on textures, and that is basically going to conclude the full video. So yeah guys, that is going to conclude this one. I hope this video has given you some valuable insights on where to find vocals for your tracks, which I know so many of you struggle with. Remember, the best results are going to come from putting in that effort, so I'd greatly encourage you to put aside that time to dig if it is those hidden gems you're after. If you found this tutorial helpful, then do please consider giving it a like, subscribing, and feel free to fire any questions or suggestions in the comments below. Also remember to check the description for that free vocal collection I mentioned earlier, and I'll see you in the next one.